Thanks for tuning into the Juras-Sick Park cast, the Jurassic Park podcast where guests chat with me about Michael Crichton's 1990 novel Jurassic Park, and also not that too. A big shout out to Christoph Oakes of Snail, and a big thank you to him for letting me use his band's music to score this podcast, and you can find his music on Spotify and on Bandcamp. And today's intro is from the song Death of a Dream, and the outro is Sleepyhead from Snail's debut album Snail. The Computer-Assisted Sonic Tomography device, or CAST system, that Grant uses in his fieldwork in Snakewater, Montana, is credited in the text by Michael Crichton as being an advancement from the field of archaeology, not paleontology, though Crichton doesn't specifically make the distinction in the novel. For whatever reason, they are using it in paleontological fieldwork, not archaeological work. Now, while paleontologists have joined the show to share that using sonic tomography to look for rocks in a rock wouldn't work, because it's dependent on the density of the rocks being different, which they're not, because they're all rocks, so the results wouldn't be too effective from in terms of like the sonic tomography. It just wouldn't calculate. It wouldn't identify rock against rock. There's no difference. However, in archaeology, where researchers are looking for wood or pottery and actual bones, not fossils, which are rocks, and things of an archaeological nature, sonic tomography might actually work. In episode 44, Control, I got to speak with the terrific guest Adam Buck, who spent some time volunteering at archaeological digs in Greece, and he shared some of his observations on using sonic tomography, which is pretty cool. Check it out. So one of the things that our hero Alan Grant gets to do is we meet him out on a dig site, and he's using a computer-assisted sonic tomography device. They call it a thumper, and in the book it describes specifically that it is being used in archaeology. And I had a paleontologist visit and tell us, I think in episode 8 or something like that, that in particular, using the sonic imaging to investigate rock against rock, that you would get no distinction in terms of your interpretations. But telling word that Crichton uses that is useful in archaeology. And I don't know if he himself became confused and wrote archaeology instead of paleontology when he was writing it,
right.
Because that is not an uncommon thing for people to mix up, get those two words mistaken. But
Sure,
also,
yeah.
maybe this computer-assisted sonic tomography is something that is being useful in archaeology, where you would find a pot, which is not a rock, or you would find a bone of a person that has not fossilized, which is not a rock, and therefore the differences in density do appear on the images. And so I wonder, correct me if I'm wrong, did you get to go to Egypt on an archaeological dig?
So I went to Egypt in 2008,
Yeah.
but it wasn't on an archaeological expedition. I went to Greece in the summer of 2006 with the University of Windsor on an archaeological expedition. And so we did a full summer. We did a 4-week dig on the Gulf of Corinth, which is sort of like the northwest of the Peloponnese, which is the lower sort of detached portion of Greece from the mainland. And interesting enough, we did use ground penetrating radar to examine the one site that we were on. So there were a number of sites that we were involved with. There was a 3rd century AD Roman grave site, and there were 7 graves that were discovered and exhumed. The primary site was from about 200 BC, and it was a Mycenaean settlement. And it was a unique settlement in all of Greece in that some of the features that were discovered there haven't been found anywhere else. And so they've done documentaries about it being the lost city of Atlantis. There was a massive perimeter wall that encompassed the entire settlement. And I think it was like 20 miles. Like it was huge, 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 huge. And so the grueling work of that site was to excavate this giant stone wall, which was about waist high when fully dug out.
Ooh, yeah.
And so that we always joked that was sort of the punishment to do that, because it was really tedious and it was monotonous.
Get the students, it's their job to dig this out.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was 40 degrees in the shade, like it was hot. But the interesting feature was this building that had 2 large stone vats that all of the archaeologists of that site, and so there was a director of the site, and then there was the American co-director who was sort of the financial backer, and then there were some American PhD doctoral students and a couple of European ones, and then there was this group of Canadian students that were undergraduate students that were really just there to kind of like fuck around and find out. It was just a fun time. We weren't like like hardcore students by any stretch of the imagination. We weren't working towards PhDs or anything. And so they had these really big stone vats. And so they were trying to determine, they did analysis for dye residues because they thought maybe it was like a facility where they dyed textiles. They thought maybe it was like some sort of food processing, like they were making, like fermented fish or something. And I should really find out about that. I got invited back to like the 15th anniversary of that dig site because they've concluded the dig is there because they didn't really discover anything like significant in terms of like a statue of Poseidon or something like that. Like we found coins when we were there. We found some really interesting pottery. My professor, Dr. Weir, he was a Rhodes Scholar, and his PhD was in coins of Greek antiquity, and so specifically how that related to trade, commerce, and things like that. So when we found coins, he was pretty excited, and he could tell us where each coin was minted, what that meant, and all these kind of crazy things, which was super interesting. He was a fantastic professor. I don't know if he's still at the University of Windsor or not, but he was like a real life Indiana Jones, in that like Indiana Jones was a hardcore nerdy professor that spoke Latin, and his parents were missionaries, so he grew up he spoke Swahili and Latin, English, French. Like he was just a really, really interesting guy.
Really?
Scottish missionaries, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Because I took one of his classes. He was kind of nerdy, but
hardcore. Yeah.
But
yeah.
You're right.
But
I'm glad you got to know him deeper, because that's amazing.
Yeah, he was a really, really kind human being, and he really encouraged everybody to just really envelop themselves in sort of what we were doing. And yeah, he was a great chaperone.
Right on. So they got to use ground penetrating radar, and they found they don't know what. But pretty cool all the same. They are using it. So thanks again to Mr. Buck for joining the show. All right, a big thank you for tuning in. If you're interested in more of the podcast, you can find it wherever podcasts are, and just look for Juras-Sick Park Cast. You can include those hyphens, or just Jurassic Park Podcast. That might work too. And if you like the videos, you can like and subscribe and receive notifications when a new one is available. There is a lot more to come. Until next time.